This interview is with our first international guest, Laura, the Whisky Girl, who hails from Scotland and takes us on a journey as we learn about her struggles with visa applications, lack of working rights while she awaits the government's decision to approve her residency here in Australia, how this played into her mental health over the past 3 years, and how she coped with lockdown, the uncertainty of ever seeing her mum and gran back in Scotland, and depending on her partner for financial support. Laura was a pleasure to interview, and I'm sure you'll join me in congratulating her as she not only emerges from this torrid year of 2020, but also manages to come off her antidepressant medication throughout this time. Inspirational stuff, and all with a fantastic Scottish accent. Have a nice listen. Well, hello and welcome to you, Laura, on this very first day of November 2020, and thank you so much for your time today.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you for having me. This is pretty exciting to talk to you. Nerve-wracking, but because I think it's going to be an emotional ride, this interview. But it needs to be. I'm glad to be part of it. I really am. I'm really excited to be part of your podcast. Thank you for asking me on, Mike. Thank you.
That's all right. And such a nice, it's a beautiful voice to listen to. I'm sure everyone will really enjoy hearing you. So given the fact that you're quite obviously from Scotland, today's interview will start off with some questions about your origins before moving into our regular set of questions about life in Victoria. So can you tell us a little bit about where you've come from and the place that you were born?
Yeah, so I was born in a town in Scotland called Stirling. And raised in a small town outside of Stirling, and then moved up to the Highlands when I was a young teenager to the Glenlivet distillery. So I was pretty much throughout my teenage and adult years, I was up in the back end of nowhere with not much happening. Interweb and all that jazz was just coming about. So it was pretty secluded area. And and then of course I moved to Edinburgh as well when I was in my sort of early 20s. So I moved around Scotland in general. So home, I always refer to home as sort of the Speyside area, and Edinburgh are my homes in Scotland. So yeah.
Edinburgh is fairly populated, so I imagine it wouldn't be too much of a difference in culture or sort of, I guess, busyness.
Edinburgh
Go for it.
Edinburgh is actually not too populated. Actually, for me, it was populated. Coming from middle of nowhere, moving down to the big smoke. That's what I thought. Its population is just under 300,000 people.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not big compared to Glasgow. However, it does go up in population during the festival, during July, August. That it triples in population, and that was a huge sort of curveball this year, of course, as well, with the festival not going ahead in August, the film festival and the Fringe. So
what a loss, hey? Definitely.
I think it's across the board a loss for all tourism. You know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what do people sort of do? I know you've got sort of a few different hometowns, as you say. I guess I'm trying to get a bit of a picture of how different the lifestyles in your hometown or towns is to your Victorian lifestyle in Australia.
Yeah, it's been really different. Like, first of all, when we first went into, like, say, March time, when we were in, like, panic mode, really, just the government trying to find out how to get a sort of rule over what was happening here in Australia, not just Melbourne or just Victoria. Literally back home in the UK, because when I talk about the UK, Scotland and England are very separated in this, by the way. We have our own rules in Scotland and own rules in England, so it's very separate.
Right.
They went into full lockdown pretty much straight away. Literally no shops were open, no bars, restaurants, cafes, like pretty much stage 4 was for us in Victoria. They went into straight off the bat.
And that was the UK, or was it Scotland, or was it England?
That was UK and then Scotland, yeah. So, so it's England and Scotland.
Sure.
England opened up a little bit earlier. Scotland's kept full lockdown for much longer. And they came out of lockdown, full lockdown, as in shops were opening up. You were able to go to cafes and bars and so on. Pretty much about 2.5 months ago that happened. And slowly but surely the cases were starting to get up again. So they're on the verge of going back into full lockdown.
Absolutely, yeah.
As of today, basically. England, however, went back into full lockdown last night.
Right. And that's like a stage 4 restriction type lockdown that we had here in Victoria.
Yeah, that's it, all across England. But Scotland, we're doing it differently.
Yeah.
I'm always on the government website for Scotland, because Nicola Sturgeon is our First Minister. So our First Minister is basically like, the Premier or the Prime Minister of your country. So, but Nicola Sturgeon, literally, her and her team are awesome. You can go onto the government website in Scotland and they have everything written in reports. This is why we're doing this. This is the cases and this is how we do the math to go, right, this has to go into lockdown. And Scotland's population is only like just under 5.5 million, okay, in Scotland.
So yeah, a bit similar to, I mean, not really, but we've got roughly around 6 million people in Victoria. So not unlike Victoria in that way.
Yeah, so the population and size even is very similar to Victoria.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. However, the cases are much bigger.
Is that right?
The cases in Scotland are a lot more. I'm just going to pull up the COVID cases in Scotland. As of last night, total cases are just under 63,000.
Okay.
Cases. And deaths just under 3,000 deaths in Scotland.
Yep. As opposed to here, when we've been in lockdown in Victoria, I think that the rough figures around that at the moment are about 810 or something like that in Victoria.
Yeah, well, Australia as a whole is just 27,000
cases. Yeah, and I think around 900 or so deaths.
907 deaths in Australia completely.
We've got to remember that Australia has a population of 22 million people. I think there's roughly around the same amount of people in Australia as there is in the capital city of London, isn't there?
Right, yeah.
So there's quite a vast difference in population, isn't there? What do you think? I'm curious to know what what you think the reasons are for such high numbers in Scotland itself.
I was trying to think that as well, especially because they went into full pelt lockdown. I felt freaking awful when they did that. When we were still moaning and whinging about not being able to go to the pub, or like we could still go and shop at Kmart and IKEA, and like it was. To be honest, when we first went into stages here, stage 2, stage 3, it was nothing compared to what they were doing back home. Like they were not allowed to travel outside their town. They were literally going to you were only allowed to go to a supermarket once a week or something. You were given timings when you went into the supermarket to get out of it.
Wow.
You could only go round it in a certain way, so you had to go in one entrance and out the other and follow a certain route. Like
we did see that here too a bit too. I remember even now there's a little bit of that now, but that wasn't initially there. So they went right into that really tight hold or that tight restriction.
And that's why I was thinking, why are the cases so high even now after coming back out of it? Like, in all honesty, I think it's where it is. It's a tiny island compared to the rest of the continent of Europe. It's a tiny island. There are people coming in and out. You are able to go across the border. It's not like restricted like here that you can't get across the border of Victoria into New South Wales.
Okay, so they didn't close the borders from Scotland to England in that time?
I don't know if they did or not. There was no. Mum never mentioned that there wasn't any military people literally telling you can't get into Scotland or you can't get into England.
Unlike the checkpoints here.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much use your head. Do what you need to do, but just don't do it, but we're not physically stopping you.
Okay, that's a really interesting point of difference, because we had quite a police presence, didn't we? We had checkpoints in Victoria. We still do at the borders. We were under a 5K radius in that stage 4, those stage 4 restrictions, which has only just been lifted in the last couple of weeks. So your feeling is that wasn't the case in Scotland, even though they were under quite tight restrictions in their lockdown situation early. There was some travel still, maybe some intermingling between England and Scotland, and perhaps in the wider community. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, obviously, we're just going to be talking about what your observations are. We're not experts in this. We're just discussing it. This is as a disclaimer, this is just what you've sort of heard from your family back home and what you can sort of divulge from the internet, I guess.
And also, from what I've seen of my friends as well, the friends obviously in Edinburgh and in the central area, as soon as they came out of lockdown, I had friends flying to Turkey and to Spain, to Italy, to France, to go to their holidays that they booked months ago. They were all, and fair enough, some of them had to come back. Once they came back, they had to quarantine in their household for 2 weeks. But they did actually have international travel, as in they weren't able to go off to the continent and come back again.
Yeah, interesting.
And that I found that really interesting, because that blew my mind almost. It's like we can't here go to New South Wales or South Australia, but my friends are able to fly from Scotland to Turkey and
to
back,
another country. Yeah. Interesting. Oh, there's a lot of differences, isn't there, around the globe? I'm finding it fascinating to watch how, and this is really the point of the podcast too, sort of get different perspectives in our country, or in our state. But it's really interesting to witness all the different ways that's been handled on a global scale.
And I have to be honest, I might just be biased and all, but the way that Scotland's handling it, I love the fact that they literally legit just write down everything and put it into reports, and you can access them on the internet. So if you want to know what's actually happening, you can literally go on and you can read the reports and see the numbers and go, all right, okay, I see why they're doing it this way. And then what they've actually done is that they've separated, because Scotland, as tiny as it is, and the population being so small, we're made up of many different counties, different areas, counties.
Yeah.
So each county is treated differently. It could be the tiniest population, but they're all in different levels: level 1, 2, 3, and 4, and obviously 4 being the worst, 1 being the best. So people in say Clackmannanshire, being a level 3, they can't travel anywhere. But where my mum is up in the north, she's a level 1, so she's allowed to travel a bit more. There are different restrictions, a little bit like the regional Victoria, so the metropolitan Melbourne area that we were under the 5K radius within that stage 4, and then the regional Victoria situation in more rural and remote communities was under a different level of restrictions, wasn't it? Yeah, that's pretty much, it's happening across Scotland, and it's updated. Obviously, it's daily, ongoing, but weekly reports of changes regarding how many cases there'll be. They'll change the levels at reading if they need to, and so on. That's why they're not looking at a full lockdown across the board, because there's no point. They think the cases are quite a hell of a lot lower than they were anyway. So. They're just going to keep at what they're doing, keeping it area by area until, you never know, hopefully it gets better. I think the fact that England in full lockdown, I'm always a fan of England being in full lockdown at any time. I'm joking.
No, she's not. She's not joking.
Scotland, fabulous. No, that's a joke.
Love it.
No, that's an absolute joke.
Just to go back to that point about the differences in communities in Scotland and the different restrictions based on numbers, and our inquiry into maybe why it is that certain areas have higher case numbers. Are they more densely populated or aging in their populations?
Majority of the places are more populated areas. It's looking at a map of Scotland and me knowing it, I could kind of guess which area will be a level. Glasgow's level 3 going on level 4 because it's the most populated area. Thing is, they're allowed to like in level 3, you're still allowed to go out and eat, for example, but you're not allowed to drink alcohol. You're not allowed to drink alcohol anywhere. So you can, the biggest uproar that Scotland's ever had in history of Scotland is the fact that you can't go for a pint or a dram at your local pub. I'm glad.
Outrageous.
I'm so glad, actually. It's the first time I actually feel okay for not being home, because I would have hated that, being in Scotland and not being able to go for a pint or a dram.
Not at the pub. Yeah.
No, exactly.
You obviously have been able to communicate with your family and friends through platforms like Zoom or over the, how did you mostly do that?
See, like, we talk via text. Mostly me and my mum. We're terrible at actually phoning each other. Like, we've always done that. We've always messaged. Like, I literally message her every day. Like, there's not a day that goes by I don't send a message. So easy to do it nowadays with WhatsApp, you know?
Yeah.
I find personally, though, when I do physically speak or physically see her, I break down. So I don't do it. I just message. I feel like a bit of a barrier there, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Which goes into my next question. Laura, which might make you tear up a bit more. So with the borders closing and the restrictions placed upon Victorians this year, what are some of your concerns as someone with strong connections overseas? What are your major worries?
I try not to think about that. Obviously I do, but it's almost like I can't see I can't see past what we've got going on our doorstep at the moment, because I can't bring myself to even think about that. I don't know when the next time I'll get to go home is. Nobody knows that.
No.
And I get people we're all the same around the world. We're all thinking, even if you are in the same country, you know, still don't know if you're able to go see your family. But I know I won't be able to get home and see my gran, for example. My gran's 93, and I've just had to come to understand that I'll never see her again. And it's been tough. Like,
absolutely.
I mean, there's so many people like me around the world, so many people. And even like here in Australia, like, I know my partner has got the same situation. You can't go and see your grandparents because you just can't, because you can't risk.
Well, the elderly, the aged care facilities have shut down. They're not allowing visitors, and at the moment, I'm sure that will lift.
Exactly. It's like, and even my mum. I was talking to Glenn, my partner, and his brother last night. We were around to see his brother Lee, and he was asking me the same questions, because Lee and Glenn both came to Scotland with me a couple of years ago, so they know my mum and my gran, been to see them and everything. So they were. It's like, because my mum lives up in the Highlands in Duffton and Speyside. My gran's still down in Stirling, which is a good 3.5 hour drive. And my mum hasn't been down to see her since February, because my gran is now in a nursing home. She moved in there only last year. It was a big deal for everyone.
Wow, she did well.
I'm so glad that she did so, because God, she's got people around her. She's healthier and happier than she has been in years. But this whole thing, obviously, you can't get out and about. People can't come in to see. So even if my mum was to drive 3.5 hours from the Highlands down to Stirling, she won't be able to see my gran anyway.
No.
So this blows my mind. My gran is now Skyping and Zooming. I can't believe my gran, who hated mobile phones, is now like a dab hand at Skype, you know? So my mum's quite okay with Skyping her, because at the end of the day, at least she gets to see her then, but she doesn't want to drive 3.5-4 hours just to stand outside and look through a window at her mother. No. That would break her heart, you know?
Absolutely. It's so painful, that part of it. I absolutely agree with you. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, it's an amazing story, actually, Laura. And yeah, I can really feel how difficult it is.
And then I've got my father, my strange father, who I started sort of talking to over the past 2 or 3 years now. He's got a hotel and pub in Argyll and Bute in the Highlands, North Highlands of Scotland. And had a shitty time as well. Like, obviously not being able to have people come and stay, and then the pub being closed. It's just been horrific, you know. In it's highly Highland community in a village like called Bonner Bridge, just near Dornoch. It's got a population of 200 people if they're lucky. So they literally survive on tourists coming up and around and people going out.
Yeah. So just to interrupt you there and ask a bit of a technical question about economics too. Did the government in Scotland do anything similar to what the Victorian government did here with the JobKeeper thing?
Yeah, they did that straight away. Mm-hmm. They did it in a different kind of way, I think, from what I can remember. They didn't just give it... I think they gave out packages to businesses. Like, my dad got a certain amount of money as a business way back in March, April, I think it was. For people with jobs, as in, like, you know, how we'd have the JobKeeper here in Australia, it was more they got the certain amount of the percentage of their wages paid. I mean, stay at home, but we'll pay a certain amount of your wages, so you're not going to lose out. Some got most of it, others got, you know, depending on what your wage was, you know.
Sure, yeah.
So they didn't lose out too much. In fact, to start with, it was pretty much stay at home, you're still getting the same amount of money. Great. You know, so they were all, like, for the first few weeks, it was a bit hectic, but it was like, oh, yeah, you know what I mean? And then it was quickly getting over it. I think similar to what happened here, the first few weeks was like, oh, this is really shit, drama, oh my God, we don't know what's happening. And then the sense of realisation sets in as well, and it's a different state of affairs. You're like, oh my God, so this is real, this is actually happening. It's not as... Yeah,
it's a very much a journey. Yeah, we'll get to that when we talk about
and waves, up and down waves of your emotions have gone up and down across the board.
And they have. We're going to talk about the mental health journey a bit later in the interview, actually, where we can really expand on that. But basically, just to finalise with the questions around your country of origin, and again, I really appreciate your openness to discuss this. It's really there's a lot of grief, a lot of grief there for people in a similar position as you. So, how long have you been in Australia now for, Laura? And also, what were the reasons for coming to Australia?
I've been in Australia since March 2011, so coming up 10 years. I can't even believe that. I honestly cannot believe that I've been here for then. That'll be a quarter of my life I've spent in this fine land.
A decade, yeah.
A decade, yeah. So I came across in 2011 for a 6-month holiday, because I was 29 and I was quite high up in my industry. I loved working in Edinburgh, working for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society as their ambassador, running the vaults, Queen Street. Anyway, I loved my working in the whisky industry. But I was 29, going on 30, and I wasn't in a relationship. I didn't have a mortgage to a house. I was quite financially set. I was sound. And I thought, what the hell? I'll do a bit of travelling. And the company I was working with was totally okay with that. They had my job on hold for me coming back. So I was like, screw it, I'll get my visa to Australia, which I never thought I'd ever do. I never had the draw to go to Australia. I was more of a, I don't know why, it was just more of a, well, hell, why not? Why not? So I did it. I went online and just got my working holiday visa, and then decided to fly out here in 2011, just, you know, for travelling, a bit of a holiday, and then work if I needed to work. But as soon as I landed in Sydney, I had already got offered 2 or 3 jobs because people had heard that I was coming out. I was in a really lucky situation because my industry was really small, still is kind of small, but people had heard that I was coming out and were like, oh snap, well Laura Hayes coming out, well will you... Basically, they asked me to do tastings for them straight off the bat. So I started out as a Johnny Walker Diageo ambassador as soon as I got here to Australia. I did whiskey tastings around Sydney in all the cocktail bars and so on. And then eventually I was like, listen, I need to do a bit of travelling. So I went and travelled, and I decided that I did want to stay a bit longer, and I had to do farm work for that. So I literally flew to WA and spent 3 months in Margaret River, working on the vines. That
Not
was
bad. Not bad.
bloody hard work. Getting paid, I was getting paid nothing. But I had to get a certain amount of days in order to apply for my second year holiday, my working holiday visa. So I did that, and I flew back to Sydney with like literally $20, and I had a job lined up, but I had nowhere to stay. So I found a hostel in King's Cross, the Jackaroo Hostel, and I was a cleaner in the Jackaroo Hostel for free accommodation. So at night, I did whiskey tastings in all the best bars and hotels and places in Sydney in this area. And during the day, I was cleaning toilets in a hostel in King's Cross.
Wow!
I had to get people to drop me off in a different place. I got them to pick me up and drop me off at a different place, so they didn't think I didn't want anyone to know I was still living in a hostel. Wow. I had to do that to raise enough money to actually get a house to stay in. I did that. I managed to get enough money to get an actual house in Darlinghurst, and I moved into a house with my friends, and I lived in Sydney till 2016, but travelled the whole of Australia. I was only in Sydney like about a quarter of the time. The rest of the time I travelled the whole of the continent for whiskey, like working for Chivas Brothers and William Grant and Sons. And in 2016, I lost my job at William Grant and Sons because of visa stuff.
Yeah.
And then a job here in Melbourne. So I flew to Melbourne as of early 2017. I was here in Melbourne. And honest to God, I'm so glad I'm here in Melbourne and not Sydney.
Yeah.
I miss Sydney a little bit, but not as much as everybody expects. I think Melbourne's a lot more cool, calm, collected. Well,
it suits you. I know, yeah. It suits you better, maybe. Yeah, it's definitely got a different culture.
In the meantime, I've still not got a bloody visa to work.
I was just about to say that.
I've been in a working holiday visa. I've been on 2 different 457s. I'm now on a bridging visa, awaiting my partnership visa with Glenn. We applied in 2018, March. We're still having to wait, and I have no working rights. So I literally got all working rights just whipped away from me, which was devastating.
Yeah,
absolutely devastating.
Absolutely, which would have had a massive impact this year, quite obviously. Yeah. So it's been a pretty arduous process, and you're still waiting for that. You'd like to be a permanent resident here. Is that true? Yeah,
absolutely.
And you're still waiting on that approval, that visa approval, which is you're sort of in no man's land a little bit at the moment, aren't you?
Oh yeah, a lot more now because of COVID.
Yeah.
But this definitely I mean, when it first happened, it was like a massive kick in the gut. The COVID thing, I was just like, what literally can happen next? You know, I felt personal. It's not personal, but it felt personal.
Yeah, I imagine it did.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely understandable with your story. Yeah. Oh, wow. So let's talk a little bit about moving into the next set of questions, which is about your living arrangements now. Thank you. That was an amazing story, by the way. Just the last 10 years of a person from Scotland coming into our country and trying to make a go of things. And it's fascinating. Okay. And you've landed in Melbourne, and you're now living with your partner. And whereabouts do you guys live now?
We live in Hawthorne. I'm so happy to say that we live in Hawthorne. Finally found some area that I'm happy in. It's like a little retreat. Not too far from the city. Not that I've actually been to this. I realised yesterday I've not actually been into the city since March, so I should shut up, you know. But it's only like 6 k's away, and I've still not been. But no, Hawthorne, but where we are situated is literally on the cusp of Hawthorne, Richmond, and Kew.
Lovely areas. So and that's east of, just for listeners that may not be aware of the location of Hawthorne in regards to Melbourne, it's pretty much due east, but it's, as you say, quite close to the city. It's it's a pretty green, leafy inner city suburb, really, isn't it? Tell us a little bit about the culture of Hawthorne, Laura.
Oh, so where we are located is not, people would, when you think of Hawthorne, people assume it's Glenferrie Road and all that. We're actually at the top end of Bridge Road, just at the cusp of Burwood, which is So we are, as I say, we're literally just on the cusp of all three. So we're right next to the Yarra River, which of course runs through Melbourne. But we do have like the walks are amazing. We can go every day go down to the Yarra and run or walk around the Yarra River. You feel like you're not. You feel like you're in the countryside, you know, but you aren't. You are in that sort of almost in the city. Cultural wise and economical wise as well, is that I was saying earlier, it's quite a weird situation because the houses around here are worth a fortune. And I think like the land obviously is worth a fortune here, and the houses are like posh AF. Some of them, there's like so many, what I would say, mansions or big houses with swimming pools, and like it's a well-to-do area. Like it's old buildings, like old. It's, you know, the houses have been built quite a long time ago. A lot of them,
they have,
and I find that fascinating. But it's a mix of cultures, and definitely a mix of incomes, I would say. Like where we actually live, we're in an apartment block, so of units. So it's not huge. It's like there's about 20 units altogether in our apartments, say. So in our building, it's very much multicultural. Like they're all different backgrounds. Not everyone's from Australia. We're all like, my neighbours are from India. I've got neighbours up top from Sri Lanka.
Yes.
And I've got a couple of single ladies living in different apartments. So it's a mixture. And so families and singles and couples. But it's definitely, as I said, the poor cousins of the block. You can tell that we're at the top of the street of units with like amazing mansions around us. You know, it's quite.
That's
funny.
an interesting, and you've actually just asked one of the prominent questions of this set, and that is, we talk a little bit about the socioeconomic status of the neighbourhood that you're in, and I'm hearing from you, and I agree with you that Hawthorn is would be in the high socioeconomic demographic, the high income status. But you're saying also that you and your household itself would not fall into that category.
No, and we're very, very lucky. Glenn and I are so lucky. We count our lucky stars every day. We always wake up and say how lucky and grateful that we have each other and the house. I mean, the house we rent, obviously, we rented it, and we put our hard work in to try and find somewhere that we could afford, because me not working, Glenn is on a minimum income, and more so now because of JobKeeper and the COVID. He has to support me because I can't work. So we have to literally just get the cheapest accommodation we could find within reason, that could be in, like, they're not living in a shoebox, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, we're just about to describe that, but you would say that you're in sort of the low household income category.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because of the one, definitely.
One income and
one income, and our rent is really low. We're really, like, our rent is really cheap.
Because of the fact that you live in a small apartment, Laura, do you want to walk us through your house, your apartment?
It's our apartment's a bottom floor, and it's one bedroom, bathroom, living area, and kitchen. So it's a very long unit.
A little bit like a shoebox, actually. Would it be?
It is like a shoebox.
Yeah,
it's small,
it's cozy,
it's cute.
Yeah.
But we have an outdoor area as well. We're very fortunate because we're on the ground floor. We have the back, so we have an outdoor area.
Yes,
as well. So for what we pay and what we're doing, we are very, very lucky to have.
It does sound that way. Yeah, it sounds really cozy.
It's kind of tucked away at the back. We're out of everyone's way.
You got some green spaces. Around your parks and gardens. And I know myself from knowing the Hawthorn area too, the gardens and the parks are just beautiful, and you live right near the river, so it's a lovely little area that you are in. Yeah. Well, good on you. So can you just describe a typical weekday for you guys before the pandemic and before lockdown hit Victoria? What was it like?
A weekday was so Glenn obviously works 3 days a week. He's always been on a part-time basis, but he also had another job. He had 2 jobs to start, so he left his old work to go to another job to get more, just to open up avenues for him and all. So he did have 2 jobs prior to COVID. So he would work 3 days at one company and then 1 day at his old company, which just was great. Yeah. He kept us in the loop with his old friends and everything like that, and they had that little bit of more coin coming in as well, because of looking after me as well. And so amazing. And COVID happened, and nobody knew what was happening. So he had to get let go from his older job. They were like, "Listen, there's no need for you to come in 1 day a week." So, sure. And then he we didn't know what was happening with his new job. But so basically, old before COVID, I can't even bloody remember it now.
No, it's like a time warp, isn't it?
It would just be getting up in the morning. He goes to work. I'm cutting about, trying to make myself busy. Planning what we need to do. Like, I'd go shopping and do the housework, and I'm becoming a housewife basically. Yeah.
Well, you're in transition, aren't you? You're in transition. Your old life and your
I have definitely worked a lot on my mental health over the past year or so, I would say, after all this. But
fantastic.
Her day-to-day life really hasn't changed too much, because I've never been able to work anyway. It really was tough when it first started, when literally Glenn couldn't go to work for the first month or two, when they just closed down all businesses. That was hard going, because there was no routine, there was no getting up, going to work, nothing to sort of keep you in that momentum,
Absolutely.
I mean, mentally, that really had a toll. I think more so on Glenn than me, because I mean, I was kind of used to not having, not being able to work anyway. But
yeah,
and it was also nothing to look forward to. Like, we always had things. It got beyond the stage that everything that we had planned up until that certain stage, we didn't do it. We weren't able to. Everything was cancelled, and it got to the stage that all our plans that we had made had passed, and we weren't able to do it. And we can't plan for the future now, because there's nothing to plan for. There's nothing open. We can't go traveling. We can't go to gigs. We can't. There was just, that's a huge toll that played definitely on us, and definitely on Glenn. He's a big fan of going to gigs, planning to meet up with his friends, and so on. You couldn't do that. There was no push forward.
That's exactly right.
That was a hard thing to get over.
And I guess spending a lot of time together, where you'd have your separate activities that you'd be doing in the day, and then coming back to each other in your little nest to discuss the things that you'd learned that day and interact on a different level, and having that little bit of space. So I understand that once everybody sort of was at home together, it was definitely a challenge, and having no idea about when that would end as well.
That was it. That was a killer. It was when was it going to end? And we did learn a lot about ourselves and about each other. I'm so thankful and grateful that I have Glenn, because I really, honest to God, I've always been a person that I like people. I love people, right? But I love my own space. I can't live in people's faces all day, every day. It's just not in my nature. I mean, I like my own space. I like to know that people are around me, but I like my own space. And I think Glenn's very similar to that as well. But I swear to God, I've never had we have just been, I couldn't imagine it doing it with anyone else. I've never got aggravated. I've never got aggravated with him. Like, wow. I'm not even, I haven't. I've been thinking back, and I'm like, we really haven't argued. Like, we pretty much, from the very early stages of the COVID thing, I think we sort of looked upon it as, right, okay, we're going to have to do this. This is happening. And we kind of just, we just worked together. We never argued or anything like that. I'm so grateful that I love him so much, and that he's the only person in the world that I could put up with for this length of time, and vice versa. I couldn't imagine spending that amount of time with anyone else.
How beautiful.
You know?
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. I'm very thankful and grateful. I love him so much.
I think that everyone can hear that how much you appreciate and love Glenn. Yeah. It's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
He's amazing. He really is. I'm proud of him for how much he's put up. Yeah, he's done a lot. He's changed. He's done well throughout this. He really has.
Well, that's right. I was just about to ask, how has he been affected? How has his work life, first of all, been affected by? I mean, you said that he lost one of his jobs. What does Glenn actually do for?
He works in a printing. Yeah, it's in the printing industry. So he works for a company. He doesn't physically print. He lays out the digital press. For example, companies will get in touch with his company, and he will work with the fonts, data, whatever. He lays out how things are printed. Okay. Like, for example, he prints for like Swiss, the vitamin company, and like different big companies from around Australia. He does that. So he was brought back into work, which was great quite early on, because it was considered an essential service, because he prints a lot of containers and stuff like that for pharmaceutical companies and for products and bottles of whiskey. He does Starward, labels and stuff for Starward Distillery and things like that. So
I see.
People still need labels and boxes and shit when they're buying things online. So,
they definitely do. What are the impacts of COVID-19 on an industry such as Glenn's? What have you observed through his eyes of the impact of this on his workforce?
There was definitely a lot less workload. A lot of companies, obviously, as like everyone else in the world, had to stop, halt, and assess the situation and decide what they were doing. So a lot of companies, as you know, just shut down completely until we got a handle on what was actually happening. So and everyone pretty much were laid off, apart from very skeletal staff. I think they were all skeleton staff, just to cope with any kind of little bits that were coming through. But he was then brought on as, I think, just 3 days.
Yeah.
However, his colleagues that weren't part-time, they were brought down to part-time. Okay. So everybody's kind of working the same amount of hours.
So people sort of so they've all sort of been working the same hours, but they've sort of lost hours as well. So they've kind of
it's all changed across the board, and like the workload has not been heavy. It's enough, but it's not like his company, I think, used to run from like 7 a.m. until 11 at night, because they're printing up until 11 at night. Whereas they've stopped that. They close up shop. They open at a certain time and they close early. I think they close at 6 now.
Okay. And do they have to? So did he have a work permit to work, Laura? Did he have to have a work permit to work? Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
He had to have that work permit. So he was able to go in and out to his job, because he has to go through the city to go to his work.
Were there checkpoints along the way?
Pardon?
I'm sorry, were there checkpoints along the way for him? Did he ever
never mention
it? No,
he never mentioned anything like that. No, he never said he had any problems with that.
And did he have to wear a face mask at work while he was working?
Yeah, that was a huge thing, right? Neither of us are anti-maskers or tinfoil hat wearers or whatever you want to call them. People are giving names to everyone these days. We're far from protagonists or anything like that. But like, to be honest, the face mask situation, I'm not an anti-masker. I'm pro wearing a mask, but I'm anti-stupidity, to be honest, right? I'm so fed up of having to wear a feckin' mask when I'm out in the fresh air. That's what pisses me off, you know. Anyway, it really affected Glenn, because Glenn it restricts him, you know. He feels it's not good for his it wasn't good for his mental health. It really wasn't. The idea, it wasn't just a face mask. It wasn't just the act of putting it. It was the mental side of it. Like, it was almost like finally given in. Finally, the government are owning us now by muzzling us. It was more of what it stood for. But he does, honestly, he doesn't mind wearing it because of course you might have to wear it when you're in the supermarket or on public transport. Just obviously that makes sense, you know. But the fact he has to sit at his desk in our office that no one's in, pretty much,
all
wearing
day.
a mask all day, not being able to drink water. He had a couple of, I think he had at the very beginning, it was literal. You cannot take your mask off. You must not drink water or tea at your desk. You have to go to the tea room if you want to drink water. This is literally military. This is what's happening. So it was more the idea of that, because Glenn's always he follows rules, and that's it, you know. So that was a really big shock to his system, like having to wear this mask and not being able to drink his tea and water at work, having more freedom. Yeah. It played more with his mental side of things and not so much the physical. I mean, sitting at a desk with no one around you with a mask on, I would do your head in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I completely understand that.
He found it really difficult to start with. However, it's sort of kind of, it's not got used to it, but it's kind of like, it's a bit softer now because it's not just, you know, if people are not coming in and out, he's going to drink his tea at his desk, for example.
Yeah.
You're not going to, it's not as like, it's not as black and white as it was at the beginning.
That's right. Yeah, I think there's been a bit of a loosening on the fear around it too. So that does help.
Like, because neither of us are, as I say, neither of us are anti-maskers. I mean, it's just really, people really need to use their heads a bit more.
Yeah.
Like, I just say, use your heads. Like, literally use your heads. Like, it was more like both Glenn and I, and it was more to do with the fact that it wasn't just the physical act of wearing a bloody mask. It was what it was doing to people, the society around us. It became the fact that those that wear and those that don't literally, like, look at you and like you're going to kill someone if you have your mask down like that. People go, and
that's right,
cross the street. You know,
it was very divisive. It was extremely divisive.
Like, and us and them, so people against people for no reason. Yeah. No reason other than they've got a bit of material over their nose, right? And that's not what we should be living in a world that, for all the things that are happening on this planet at the moment, that's the last thing we should be going against each other for.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Well
we should
said.
all be together, united, have fucking respect for each other's thoughts and mental processes and emotions. People, it's not just as black and white as wearing a fucking mask and getting on with your day. That's cool if you can do that. Right, swap it on and on you go. It plays a lot in here with a lot of people.
It does.
It really does.
Well, that was one of my questions, actually. One of my questions is for people to identify what it was for them that really affected them the most about the social control or the social restrictions, I suppose, and the rules. Now, obviously for Glenn, that face mask was a huge symbol for him, and it was an uncomfortable part of the process. I would agree with Glenn. I've mentioned this in previous interviews. What was it for you, Laura? What was the thing that really got to you, if there was one indeed?
It's the it was watching Glenn go through it. It was hard, like not having anything I couldn't help to make it more comfortable for him, because I wasn't going to work every day, I'm not going to work every day, so I'm not having to wear a mask really, apart from when I go to the supermarket, and I don't mind it. I really don't, because I'm going on a tram and then I'm going into a shop, so I'm going to wear a mask. It's not for long. Yeah. But I get it when I'm out walking. Say it's a nice day and you just want to go for a walk, and around here there are a lot of people going for walks, especially kids, and you feel almost bad for not wearing a mask, but all I want to do is get some fucking fresh air, you know?
Yeah.
So, and it's almost like, you know, that's real. That had more to do with it, but you know what? I think it's definitely the unknown, that what's going to happen next, and the unknown of borders being opening and people allowed to go and see each other. That's the biggest thing for me.
For your
when
situation.
Are we going to just have a little bit more freedom to go and see each other? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and that definitely aligns with your personal situation as well, with the transition that you're in your life too, doesn't it? And how the unknown is definitely a bit more uncomfortable for you when you don't know whether or not you're ever going to go and see, ever be going to be able to go home as well. Totally understandable. We're going to be talking a bit more about mental health now in this final section of the interview. So get those tissues ready, Laura.
Oh, right. I was supposed to have a packet already, Amanda.
I know, darling. I know. Oh, thank you so much for your honesty and for doing this.
It's so good. This is actually so... It's
cathartic.
Good.
It's cathartic.
It's cathartic. That's the word. I couldn't find the word. But it's true. Like, it's cathartic because it's all these things that we've all been thinking, but we don't get a chance to actually sit down and not it out, actually verbalise what you're feeling. We do it to a certain extent, but not to this much, which I feel like, because I didn't, to be honest, I'd seen the questions, you gave me the questions and everything, but I didn't know it was going to come out of my mouth until I sat down and chatted to you, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
Because it's so many emotions going, and to be honest, everyone's the same. You don't have the words to actually put into what actually you feel, you know?
Truly.
It's very, very hard. So it's good to get it out.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you're appreciating the reflection. It is good to reflect. I think it really helps us to process the experiences that we've been going through.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, I guess we touched on this before, but I was asking about the process over the course of 2020, and you're right, it does seem like a bit of a time warp. Let's think back to when coronavirus first started to become known at the start of the year, and it was overseas, it was in Wuhan, it was kind of not on our shores at that point when we first started to hear about it. What were some of those feelings? What did you go through?
Oh, at the beginning, at the very end of last year and the beginning of this year was like, roll my eyes. I hate to say it. Roll my eyes, thinking, here we go. Another SARS, you know. I knew it was bad. I knew it was awful. I knew it was so far away almost. It was like, oh, it's far away. It's horrific, but it's far away. And then realization quite literally hit when I heard more cases in certain popping up around Europe, popping up in Scotland, and random feckin' countries, random places around the world. How the hell did that person get COVID when it's supposed to be in Wuhan? I was trying to process it, and I was like, this is mental. This is crazy. I was disbelief to start with, like, and obviously both of us, like, we've been through SARS before, like. I've been living and working in Scotland when we had the SARS outbreak and so on. So I just thought it was going to be something similar, just like before. And it wasn't until, and I kept saying, oh, maybe it is going to be bad. Maybe it is going to be bad. And Glenn and I were like, it'll be not too bad, you know. And it wasn't until early April, I went to an event. I went to a whiskey event because I still go along to events and stuff to keep my, toes in the water.
Yeah.
And I went to a whiskey event that was held in the city, with my friend Dave Broom, who is a whiskey and spirits guru writer from Scotland. He was across to do a whiskey festival in Christchurch in New Zealand. So he came to Australia first to do his talks and stuff. So I went to see him, and obviously there's about 40 of us there at the tasting. And he had just flown in from Scotland, and he was telling me all about this mad COVID. And we were all joking about it, like, oh, cough, cough, oh, we're going to get the COVID, ha, ha, la, la, la. And then the next night, all my friends, I didn't go, but all my friends went to his premiere, because he's written a film, and they had a premiere at one of the, I can't remember the name of the cinema here in Melbourne, but he had that. So he invited like 50 or 60 of people in the industry from all around Australia to come to his premiere. And they then did the premiere, had the party and everything like that. And then he flew to New Zealand the next day to go to Christchurch to do the Whisky Festival. And then by the time he touched down in Christchurch, he got a phone call to say, listen, someone at the event last night has tested positive for COVID-19. And he's like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? No, that's just not how, that's mental. No one has it that. It's far, far away, you know?
Uh-huh.
But everyone in that cinema, including my best friend Joey and a lot of my other friends, all tested, like not tested positive, but because they were in that room for over 2 hours watching the film, all had to go into quarantine.
Self-isolate.
And I was like talking to Joey on the phone going, are you serious? And I was sitting in the living room panicking, panic-stricken, when the realization was like, shit just got real.
Yeah.
They were getting quarantined. That's mental. And that was the moment the penny dropped. I was like, this is so... Because my mind opened up then to believe that, well, if that's the case, and Dave's flown to Christchurch, everyone on that plane had to quarantine. And then he got to Christchurch, he had to go straight into quarantine, and then he didn't know if he was going to be able to fly back to Scotland. Yeah. And then my mind started making up all these things, going, oh my God, this is just happening here. What happens across the world?
Yes.
And then I was like, that was the moment I was like, that's when I realised that I got scared. I was
just about to say, did you feel that... Like, yeah. So there was some feelings of fear, a real feeling of fear and a bit of panic.
Fear, yeah. And it was true fear and terror of, what is this disease?
Sure.
This is something I want to say as well. And it's not taken away from the disease, the virus. It's not. Like, at this point, in the early 2020, no one really knew what it was doing to people. We didn't know what was going to happen if you got the COVID-19 or the coronavirus. We were hearing horror stories and seeing horror stories in Wuhan and in China of people getting ripped from their homes and people like getting like tearing out the city, and we were seeing horror shows, and the realization of what happens if we get this. We're going to have to go around wearing full, like, honestly, we're all the same. We all think we have to wear these zombie apocalypse hazmat suits and stuff because we didn't know the extent of it. And I had sheer terror of getting this virus. I had absolute terror of Glenn getting this virus, or my family back home, or my friends around me. It was like, what the hell? And you know what? Sitting here now, I can't remember the last time I thought, oh, I'm scared of getting the virus.
Right.
It sounds awful. That sounds awful to say. I'm not scared of getting it. Obviously, it's horrible. It's an awful virus. It's horrific. But it's become bigger than that now. I'm more scared of what's happened environmentally, economically, socially, mentally. I'd have days that I don't even think about the virus itself.
Sure.
I have days that I've forgotten about the virus. It's more to do with what the impact it has on society.
The COVID fallout. Yeah, absolutely.
It's now become a lot bigger than the actual virus itself.
Sure.
A much bigger scale. Yeah. And I'm not decrying the disease. Is awful. I did at the beginning think, really, is there actually a disease, or is there actually a disease out there? Is it just a bad cold? But I wised up quite and realised there is a virus out there, obviously. But because you go up and down like that, you know.
Well, that's right.
You don't know what to believe or who to listen to, because you're getting fed information, like, to begin with, left, right, and centre from different avenues, and you're kind of like overwhelmed. What do you believe? What's real and what's not? You know? Yeah,
it became so much bigger.
And then going from that through the months now, thinking into us literally getting drip fed the fucking same information, numbers day after day by Dan Andrews. We were getting drip fed the same mundane numbers, and the hope was slowly dwindling out of our souls for months. It was almost like there was no light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I just want to say, and without actually seeing, I'm not sure about you, but I certainly know personally that I haven't met anyone who's had COVID in Victoria. I don't know anyone who's had COVID. So it was quite an invisible virus for us. There was a lot of social restriction for a virus that wasn't actually tangible to us as a community.
That's
as much. Yeah, it was an interesting. That's what's really been quite interesting about it, I think. And we're just going to move into the next question on that. What, with all of these feelings that you had and that real journey that you've taken throughout 2020 with COVID-19 and the fear and the, you know, the concepts around truth and feeling anxiety, what did you do to cope with those feelings over the time? Please only be as honest as you'd like. It's a tricky question, but as I said to you earlier, I mean, I know that there's been an increase in alcohol consumption in Victoria. What did you do?
You know what? Glenn and I both did the opposite. We stopped drinking as much as we used to. We like at the very beginning of it all, we kind of, like, especially when Glenn couldn't go to work, it was like, oh, let's have a dram, or let's have a gin, let's have a whiskey, you know, we can do it because we're not working. And
sure.
And it was almost like, and I was smoking as well, and I was definitely smoking a lot more than I usually would. And it was just an ongoing thing for the first 2 or 3 weeks, I would say. And like, I mean, that's my go-to. Like I've all my life I've struggled with alcohol. I know it's my career. I work in the whiskey industry, but I had a fine balance of, you know, I've got a weird relationship with alcohol because I come from a background of family of alcoholics and stuff like that. So I was quite aware of the alcohol consumption that I was taking anyway in general, and that's something I've been working on for the past couple of years. And then this happened, so Glenn and I quite literally went, right. I actually didn't even say it. I just felt it. I was like, there could be two ways here. There could be me sitting drinking wine until 3 o'clock in the morning, or it could be no wine, no fags, cigarettes, and just sort it out, you know. So I decided to do that.
Yeah, so you actually took the opportunity to increase your immunity and to increase your health.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not saying we don't drink, but we'll have a drink at weekends now and again. So what I did was, we found like silly things, like we definitely watched a lot more TV together, which is great. We rewatched things, but I definitely, like, I'm now doing a lot more. I exercise now. I never used to exercise. Like, Glenn's just gone out for another run. That's his second today. There's nothing else to do.
Yeah,
and I've been running. I've never exercised ever in my life since school, and even at that, that wasn't much. So the fact that I'm going for a run every day, if not every 2 days, or I'm doing a workout every day, I mean,
wonderful.
It's mental that I'm doing that. So I've definitely coped a lot. I'm going to say, I think what we've done, Glenn and I, I'm very proud of him and us for. I think the only way of doing it was having a clear head. To be honest, I wanted a clear head to see how we were going through that. I'm not saying that we're perfect and we've not had a few nights of getting a few drams in us, but like
very balanced.
A lot of my friends have said that they have hit it hard. Like a lot of people have drank a lot throughout this epidemic or pandemic. Sorry,
that's right.
Which is completely what I thought I would be doing as well, and what I totally think, well, that's just normal for everyone. That we haven't done that. I've also taken the time to sort my mental health out, try and put a lid on it a little bit, because I have all my life I've battled with depression and anxiety, but more so depression to extents of, like, I was 12, 13 years ago, I was so sick. I was at the bottom of it, you know, and I was given medication, and I went to a lot of counselling and so on. I actually have now stopped taking that medication. I've been on the medication for over 12 years, and I'd weaned myself off of it for the past 2 years. And as of, like, it's been 2 months since I've had any medication.
Wow. Congratulations.
So, thank you. It wasn't easy. It was fucking hard.
Yeah.
But I think anyone could do it. If I could bloody do it, anyone can do it, because, I mean, that was hardcore stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm using time because Glenn and I talk a lot. We talk all the time. We communicate what we're feeling. So like, I mean, I now go. I'm now going to see a therapist as well. So I'm not doing it alone. I'm not just come off the medication and that's it. I was quite aware of if I'm stopping the medication, I'm definitely going to have to sort something out. You've got to talk to someone.
Totally.
So I've definitely taken a lot. We both have taken time out to go, listen, we're going to use the time wisely. I may as well use it for the right reasons. I can't work anyway, so I'll take the time to work on my mental health.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
That is fantastic. You've actually, you have done so well through all of the uncertainty of this time to actually turn it around and to actually use it to your own benefit and to rise above it like you've done. I absolutely congratulate you. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, we still have our days, like.
Yeah, that's life.
It's the only way I can see it, and it's literally like, with the whole everything that's happened, it definitely is quite literally a day by day scenario. Like I've had to have my mental state of mind has been like that since before COVID anyway, because I've been literally like in this dark hole about not being able to work, the insecurity, the unknown, like not knowing when I'm going to get my visa, my rights. It's a horrible feeling not knowing your future and not feeling like an actual citizen or a human being.
Yeah.
Like a lot of like horror, like it's literally always in my head. When am I going to get this visa? When am I able going to work again? When am I going to get my rights as a human being, basically?
So you're constantly living with that feeling of
constantly
having an unknown.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in a loop in my head, and that's what a lot of my talking to my therapist about is that stopping that loop, because there's nothing I can do until it's come through. But it's like being in a. I feel like I'm in a room, my hands tied, and I'm not allowed to do anything. I've had job offers left, right, and centres, and even throughout this pandemic, the people have asked me, and I'm not allowed to work because obviously I can help out make this hand sanitizers and stuff like that, and I'm not able to do that. I'm not allowed. It's been so frustrating. So I had to stop thinking that way and just go, right, fuck that. I need to chill out. I need to go, right. It's going to just literally have to. There's nothing I can do.
Yeah,
there's nothing I can do until it happens, and then just hope that it comes through soon. But I can't. We don't know if it's going to be. They might just say no, and then I'll have to. I don't know what we'll do.
It's really putting on new. It's putting a new take on literally taking one day at a time for you. That's what you have had to really live that.
I've had that since way back. So even throughout the COVID pandemic, I've already had that train of thought, that way of thinking. I need to get to that stage. I have to do day to day to day to get through it, to try and get to that, because I got told when we applied for the visa back in 2018 it will be 2 years until they look at it. That's the way it does it. So we're told from that date 2 years, and then they will maybe look at it. It could be longer. So I've been building myself up for March 2020 or 2021 to go, right, okay, we've got another couple. That's when I should be hearing,
bit of light in the tunnel. And
that's what I've been doing with COVID as well.
Well done. What was your lowest ranking of mental health out of, sort of 1 to 10? What was through this year of 2020, with all of the backdrop that you've discussed about your future and the uncertainty of where you sit, and then the pandemic itself, on a scale of 1 to 10, what was the lowest state that you got over that time? 1 being the lowest, obviously.
I don't know. Like, I would probably say, like, 2 or 3. Yeah. I mean, I think, in all honesty, I think everyone in this planet has been 1, 2, or 3 in the past 6 months.
Yeah.
I mean,
3 has definitely come up in the previous interviews as a low.
I've not been too, like, I've not been suicidal. That's one thing.
I think that would be
for me, that's a big thing, because that used to be an issue for me. But like, I have got low. Like, I have woken up a few mornings with that horrible feeling in my stomach that I've not had in over a decade. That feeling of loss and gut wrenching. You just don't want to get out of bed.
Sure. What about your highest
Oh, I would say I don't think like personally like I'm in a happy. I am in a happy place with Glenn and the house. I take everything that I have at the moment with who I'm with and his family and my friends that have helped and supported me throughout this shitty few years, and then this year especially because I found that I was in a shitty situation anyway, and then every one of my friends was then in a shitty situation because of COVID. So I'm very grateful that I have such a strong group of people around me. I've always thought about friends and family whenever I felt like shit. So I've always like they've got me through it, you know, without them knowing it. They've got me through it. So yeah, when I think of them, probably about 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Because it's fleeting moments of, oh, I feel great, and then I'm back to feeling average again. You know, there's not been days when I've been like, oh, this is fabulous, I'm having a great time.
I see.
But it's just moments.
Fleeting moments of happiness. I think that's all we can ask for at times, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take them. Thanks.
I'll take them too. Absolutely. On a bit more of a global, just to sort of finish off with these last few questions, Laura, what are your main concerns or your thoughts or opinions on a broad level of the impact of COVID-19? We've talked about you, we've talked about your family and your home in Scotland. Let's talk, you know, if you can answer this question with your friends in Australia as a country and the globe as well as a community, a global community. What are your main concerns and thoughts around the impact of COVID-19 on those groups?
That's a great question.
It's a really big question, I know.
I love it because there's so many things I'm thinking, so many concerns. It's definitely opened my eyes up to how people think. Like it's my concerns are like people are treating one another, to be honest. Like it's it's hard. It's hard. I don't know if they're like, I mean, no one's going to be the same again. That's so hard to say, that no one will be the same again. But the positive I would probably say is that from what I have seen, if we want to put a positive, it's hard to think.
You don't have to put a positive spin on it. That was just an idea.
Yeah, but the positive thing is definitely, I've noticed, it's definitely given people time to think. And hopefully people in this world will look more onto themselves, into their surroundings, into their family, and spend more time with them. Like people that weren't like able to spend time with their family and spend time with their loved ones or with themselves, you know, have hopefully realised that life isn't all about freaking running around and like going to like work all the time and running events and working your fingers to the bone and chasing that dragon's tail all the freaking time to make you happy. That there's other things, starting with your own self and those around you. You learn to live with what you have, and hopefully that will keep going. Like I hope that people keep that mindfulness almost. I hope they found it and take that forward in life and not go back, like just because they're allowed to go back to work. Hopefully they're able to kind of look into themselves and go, oh, actually, I don't need to work that hard anymore. I'm still just doing like and think and hopefully have a happier existence, to be honest. Because I think we have definitely learned to live within our means a lot more than we'd ever thought we'd imagine. So I think hopefully going forward,
I think that's a beautiful vision, absolutely. And that's my final question, which you pretty much just answered, was how do you think you'd feel if you were told we're about to go into another lockdown, for example, next March? But I guess from what you've just said, I would guess that you would hope that people would take what they've learned from this experience into the next potential lockdown or some social restrictions that may or may not happen in the future, and kind of take what they've learned and use that knowledge and that wisdom as best as they can. Yeah,
that's what I hope. I mean, there's a lot of because it's such a great question. I'm going to be thinking of that one for the next 3 days, Amanda. Because
such a big question. I'm sorry about that. It's a little bit.
Sorry, I'm blowing it because I'm sorry. I can't answer very well. I'm really. one of the world's worst people at putting into words.
I
Like
wouldn't say that.
rationalising my feelings and putting them into words is hard.
I wouldn't say that at all,
Yeah.
Laura. It's been wonderful. The last question that I do have for you is about, was there a particular image or dream that was reoccurring for you throughout this year, throughout the whole pandemic? And it doesn't have to be an image or a dream. It can be a song or a genre of music that you were drawn to, or a body of artwork. Or was there a vision or a picture or some place that you went to in your mind often throughout this time?
I've always been one to have sort of images in my head all the time, so I see myself, and I used to feel like I'm treading water constantly. Like I feel like I'm treading water constantly and trying to keep my head above water, literally just treading until I find land. So that means that I've been feeling that way since my visa situation started, because that's all I can do is tread the water until I find the land, until I get my visa. And that's how I feel. Or I sometimes feel like I'm on a roller coaster and I'm either at the top of the beginning of it, or I'm in the middle of the loop, or I'm at the end of it going, oh, thank fuck, that's over. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's the way I see it. The COVID-19 has definitely been a roller coaster, metaphorically. Mm-hmm. And that's how I imagine it in a day-to-day version. Other times, however, my dreams are mental. I have crazy dreams. And I've definitely suppressed my dreams through the past 10 years of me taking medication. And also, when I was younger, I used to just have crazy dreams that would come true quite a bit, and that freaked the living daylights out of me. So I managed to put a lid on that quite quickly to stop that from, affecting my life. But I have really found this time of COVID, like having more time to sleep and more time to sort of chill out before you sleep, and also not taking medication anymore. I've been allowed to feel my dreams, see my dreams a lot clearer, and have had some crazy ass dreams again. And I'm quite thankful for them. One in particular was actually, I think Glenn talked to me this morning about, was my drone one. I had a dream about drones. These wee mad drone things that they put in the sky that everyone has these days. That I remember last week, there were so many drones in this around. They were at head level, and you had to duck around them because they were all everywhere. Everyone was watching everyone. Drones. It was a horrible. It started off. My dream started off me oh, this is funny, and then it's crazy, and then it got scary, and it got terrifying, and then I woke up. I was like, Jesus, these are horrible drones.
They're taking over the sky.
And they are. That's literally what's happening, but higher up. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh my God. But another thing that has definitely got me through this, and Glenn and I were both in the same boat with this one, it's yes, having each other, having a good network of friends and family to get talk to, whenever, not all the time, but and knowing that they're there and letting them know that you're here as well, for example, has always got me. But there's another thing. I never used to listen to the same sort of genre of music that Glenn does. Glenn loves his music. I'm more of a visual person. I like watching things. He likes listening to things. That's how we roll. We're very opposite that way. But we found that Glenn's a fan of this Henry Cartines. I can't remember his name. He's a Spanish DJ, right? And he's since the get-go, he's in Spain, he's in Madrid, right? But since the whole beginning of COVID, he pretty much every day gets on his computer, goes live on YouTube, and just does a set, right? Wow. And you can switch on at any time on his YouTube, and he's on there. He's a wee smiley face and his beard, having a smoke with a beer, having his cat, and he's playing all his music, and he's DJing away himself in his living room in Madrid. All these comments down the side, and I tell you what, his wee face and his music just got us both through it. I'm like, everything's all right when wee Henry's face is on the screen, and I'm liking his music, sort of dance music, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's not my jam.
It's a party in your own lounge room. That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to look into that. Thanks for sharing it.
Yeah, Henry Cartines. I can't remember his name.
Fantastic, Laura. Thank you for sharing those things. And that pretty much wraps up our interview too. I want to thank you so much for speaking with me today, and for sharing your story with us. I've really felt I've really felt into how difficult it's been for you and for people who have strong ties to other countries, and the impact that the border closures have had on people like yourself. So it's been a real pleasure. It's been a real honour and privilege to listen to you speak about those issues. And I just personally wish you all the best with your new life here in Australia and in the future in general. It's been an absolute pleasure to have.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate, I really honestly thank you for asking me all these questions. I know I've been totally emotional throughout.
Well, thank you very much for that too. It's really beautiful to have someone that is so open and honest and I guess uncensored too. You've been amazing. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
You've been listening to Lockdown Stories from Inside. I hope you've enjoyed this interview and it's provided you with plenty of food for thought and the opportunity to expand your understanding of the breadth of human experience. Thank you for lending your ears as we walked a mile in someone else's shoes. See you next time.